The absence of incidents doesn't prove the effectiveness of controls. Controls can degrade even while an organisation is handing out awards for 2 years LTI free. Nancy Levinson describes the challenge. There are always warning signs before a major accident, and such weak signals are often perceived only as noise. So how can we identify and measure those signals before the fire and brimstone? G'day everyone, welcome to Safe As. I'm Dr. Ben Hutchinson. Now, the question I probably get the most is, what indicators should we be using? I've covered dozens of studies on indicators in safety and broader organizational indicators. Check them out on my site, there's so much there to read. Now today I'm going to try and sidestep that whole debate, and we're going to focus on one specific element of indicators, focusing on the effectiveness of our risk control system. So there's extensive debate regarding indicator typologies, lead versus lag, drive versus monitoring, proactive versus reactive, and more. Andrew Hopkins provides a more focused thread. He notes that the primary purpose of performance indicators must be to evaluate the effectiveness of the specific controls upon which the risk control system relies. From this perspective, the concern isn't the volume of audits or inspections completed, but whether the specific barriers designed to prevent a serious incident or unwanted event are healthy. Step 1. The risk control system. The UK's HSG 254 guide focuses on assurance and indicators for major hazards. It assumes management systems are already in place and shifts emphasis towards checking whether risk control systems are operating as intended. HSG 254's contribution is the system of dual assurance. For every risk control system, you require both a leading and a lagging indicator. The process involves 1. Identifying the risk control systems and their required outcomes. 2. Setting lagging indicators for each system to monitor what can go wrong, effectively monitoring the failure of immediate causes. 3. Identifying critical elements of each system, the specific components that must function for the whole system to work. 4. Setting leading indicators to monitor the health of these critical elements. Step 2. Defining performance and criticality. Moving really into the heart of this logic, the ICMM's Critical Control Management Framework targets high consequence material unwanted events. The goal is to define the critical control's objectives, performance requirements, and how that performance is verified in practice. Critical control is distinct from a standard or regular control. It's crucial to preventing the event, and its absence or failure would significantly increase risk despite other existing controls. To ensure these work, the ICMM defines 3 specific performance lenses. 1. Availability. Is the control in place and accessible? 2. Reliability. Can the control performance function to the required standard? 3. Survivability. Will the control function during the stresses of the event? To bridge the gap between high-level risk assessment and field verification, both the ICMM and QGN 35 utilize a critical control information summary. Here's a worked example. Methane ignition on a longwall. So consider the material unwanted event of a methane ignition. An identified critical control is the automatic methane power trip. The objective is to automatically isolate electrical power to the longwall face when methane concentration exceed a certain threshold, preventing a potential ignition source. Performance requirements, well, the trip must activate at exactly that threshold and complete the power isolation in less than 2 seconds, or whatever the criteria is. We have support activities, and these are the background tasks ensuring the control stays healthy, such as regular sensor calibration and physical protection of the sensor heads. And then the verification, the indicators in part, weekly in situ gas testing, which is a form of workplace monitoring, and monthly software trip testing, a form of formal auditing, provide the leading indicators of the control's health. And there's probably a range of other things you could do. And here's a potential shortcut. If you've already produced bow ties as part of your risk management or critical control framework implementation, then you've done most of the heavy lifting already. Use your bow ties to guide your risk control system indicators. Identify the ways to monitor and verify the barriers or critical controls, and the support structures and the degradation factors that either enable their success or affect their integrity. It doesn't need to be a gigantic list. Identify the few critical things that have to go right, first time, every time, or are just otherwise critical, and particularly susceptible to reliability or erosion. Step 3. Condition versus compliance. This example illustrates Hopkins' point. we must distinguish between compliance and condition. Compliance could be like, did we finish the weekly gas testing? And condition, what was the failure rate during those tests? Indicators must report the actual condition, the defect rate or trigger breaches, rather than just the activity of checking whether it was done or not. 4. Triggers and TARPs. A performance trigger is the point at which a control is considered not maintained. Triggers set the criteria for what action must be taken, by whom, and when. So if that critical methane reading requires immediate action, let's say it's 5% requires immediate action, but the reading is 4.95%, what action should the operator take? This is where triggers and TARPs come into it. So TARPs are your if-then mechanism. If trigger level X, action set Y, escalation Z. This is a real example where, let's say it was 5% and they measured it at 4.98%. Some incidents have shown that people just didn't take action because technically they only had to escalate the issue if it was 5%, let's say. In summary, effective assurance requires moving past broad organizational metrics to monitor the specific performance specifications, availability, reliability, and survivability of the barriers we rely on to prevent catastrophe. You can still set broader measures and indicators, but they shouldn't come at the expense of the effectiveness of your risk control system and being laser focused on understanding and monitoring the effectiveness of your systems. I highly recommend you check out these sources that I've linked today, including Nancy Levinson's work on indicators. Maybe I'll cover that paper alone on another episode. The short of it is, identify the things that have to happen or cannot happen, implement the controls or constraints, and then design indicators to measure the health of those constraints and assumptions and controls. That's targeted. It's focused on the things that are most important to your organization and its risk control systems. And it doesn't involve really lofty, pie in the sky, broad organizational indicators. It's targeted on the things that have to happen or can't happen. That's it on Safe As. Thanks everyone. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment directly on the video. It really helps. And link in show notes to support the channel.